Boosie is in hot water with the feds. Him and J. Prince Jr. Mob ties.
We left out the concert. We under the garage. Dude went to his car by himself and walked down to the parking lot. That's when somebody tried to rob him and killed the dude. What the hell my 19-year-old cousin gonna try to rob and kill somebody? Bro, we getting money, man.
Boosie is under federal investigation for supposedly setting up Duke the Jeweler and getting him taken out after luring him to a shady dice game with J. Prince Jr. in Houston. But let's unpack exactly how this whole twisted setup played out. It's about to blow your mind. And before we dive deep into this wild story, hit that like button and subscribe, because what's coming next is pure madness. We're talking about serious underground moves that most people have no clue about. This isn't just music drama. This is real-life street business hiding under the mask of hip-hop culture. So first, let's talk about who Duke the Jeweler really was. Because this man wasn't just some regular jeweler from Chicago. Duke was one of the most respected jewelers in the entire Midwest. We're talking about someone who built his name from the dirt, grinding non-stop, creating custom pieces for everyone from rising rappers to professional athletes. His hustle was unmatched. Then out of nowhere, Duke gets a call from Boosie about making a custom piece. Now, Duke had worked with plenty of artists before, but Boosie, that was a whole different story. He's a Louisiana legend with a reputation that runs deep in the streets. When Boosie hits your line talking about doing business, that's the kind of opportunity that can take your jewelry game straight to the top. But here's where things start getting sketchy. Instead of handling the deal in Chicago or Louisiana, Boosie insists that Duke comes down to Houston. That's the move that made everyone start raising their eyebrows, because from there, things just didn't add up. Boosie told Duke about this huge Labor Day weekend event, making it sound like a golden opportunity packed with celebrities who might want to cop some custom jewelry. He hyped it up, painting this picture of Duke locking in connections and stacking up big orders from A-list names. Duke was thrilled about it. He even went on social media, posting about his trip to Houston and how it could open new doors for his business. But here's the dark twist. Duke had no clue he was walking straight into a setup that would cost him everything. The whole thing was staged from the jump. And now, it's time to dig into J. Prince Jr.'s entire operation, because what's going on behind the scenes runs way deeper than anyone thought. J. Prince Jr. has allegedly been pulling this same slick scam for years, and the precision behind it is flat out chilling. The man has turned tricking and robbing successful people into a calculated system. It's not some random hustle, it's a full-blown operation. Here's how it supposedly goes down from start to finish. First, J. Prince Jr. identifies his targets, usually out-of-town rappers, athletes, or flashy business folks who roll into Houston. He taps into his network to find out who's in the city, how much cash they're moving with, and exactly what kind of ice they're rocking. Then comes the setup move. J. Prince Jr. doesn't just run up on anyone. That's rookie stuff. Instead, he plays it smart, posing as this respected Houston figure who's all about showing love and hospitality. He'll slide into your DMs, get mutual friends to make introductions, and make it all look official, just enough to earn your trust before the trap gets sprung. Once J. Prince Jr. gets his targets comfortable, that's when the real game starts. He'll show them around Houston, take them to exclusive spots, and introduce them to people in his circle, making it feel like they're being brought into some powerful network. But the truth? He's just building trust, setting the stage for what comes next.
Us all the way up, man. We met that dude, Duke the Jeweler, the night before. We was gambling. The next day, dude followed us to the concert. When we left out the concert, we under the garage. Dude went to his car by himself and walked down to the parking lot. That's when somebody tried to rob him and killed the dude.
The plan for Duke was simple, but cold-blooded. They were gonna let him win a few rounds first, just to boost his confidence, and then hit him with the rigged dice to take every dollar he brought. The goal was to make him feel like he couldn't lose, get him betting big, then wipe him out and send him back to Chicago broke. But something went way off script that night. Word on the streets is Duke somehow ended up rolling with the real dice instead of the loaded ones. Maybe someone mixed them up. Maybe the setup wasn't as tight as they thought. But whatever happened, it flipped the whole game upside down. Duke started winning, and not just small money. He walked away with over $645,000 that night. That's wild. He was on fire, snatching cash from everyone at the table, even from some serious figures who weren't used to taking L's. The energy in that room started shifting quick. You could feel the tension rising as Duke kept stacking chips. These dudes were fuming because their little con was blowing up in their faces. They had magnetic tables and rigged dice ready to trap him, but all that scheming fell apart when Duke rolled with the real deal. And here's where it gets even stranger. Boosie was standing behind Duke the whole time, constantly whistling. At first, everyone brushed it off thinking he was just vibing, but now people are saying those whistles were coded signals. It looked like he was trying to communicate with others in the room, maybe to figure out how to handle the situation that had just spun out of control. The wildest part is that Duke wasn't even acting cocky or disrespectful after winning. He was being cool about it, staying humble, showing respect to everyone at the table. But that ended up being the worst thing he could have done. The moment Duke cleared the table and stacked up that cash, the vibe in the room switched instantly. The same people who were all smiles minutes earlier suddenly turned cold and quiet, their whole energy shifting to something dark and dangerous. They weren't about to let an out-of-town jeweler walk away with more than $500,000 of their money. No way. According to what witnesses later said and what's been whispered in the streets, there was a full-blown meeting after the dice game. Boosie, Jay, Prince Jr., and their crew supposedly huddled up to figure out exactly how to get that money back. This wasn't some random heat-of-the-moment decision. It was a well-thought-out plan. They knew Duke was planning to show up at Boogie's concert the next night, which gave them time to map everything out. They tracked his moves, found out where he was staying, and lined up the perfect setup. These guys turned a hit into something that looked like a straight-up operation. Multiple people were keeping tabs on Duke that whole day, following him everywhere he went. And when they finally caught him slipping in that parking lot, he wasn't about to just give up. Duke tried to fight back. He wasn't going down easy, but he was outnumbered and surrounded by people who came armed and ready. While Duke was just trying to make it back to his car and get to his hotel, the other side showed up locked in and prepared for violence. It was an ambush, quick, brutal, and planned down to the last detail. The shooting went down fast and vicious. Duke was hit multiple times. They took every dollar he'd won from that dice game, snatched his jewelry, and then vanished into the night like ghosts. That's when Boosie flipped into full actor mode, and it was almost award-worthy. Right after Duke was gone, Boosie started dropping videos online, putting on this emotional act like he had nothing to do with it. He was on camera talking about how heartbroken he was, saying Duke was a good dude and that this kind of violence isn't my style. Then he tried to push this wild story about how some dudes tried to rob him by himself. It sounded shaky from the jump. He even claimed Duke had lost money during the dice game, when everybody knows Duke walked away that night with over $600,000 in winnings. Make it make sense. The lies started piling up quick. Boosie said Duke wasn't upset about losing. But how can someone be upset about losing when they won that much cash? The whole thing sounded rehearsed. And here's where things got even messier. Boosie's story about what happened after the concert kept changing every time he told it. First, he said Duke left alone. Then suddenly, he claimed Duke had people with him. Later, he switched it up again. That kind of flip-flopping is straight up suspicious. When someone's telling the truth, their story stays the same. It doesn't keep shifting to fit the moment. The worst part of Boosie's so-called performance? The way he tried to twist Duke's death into something that made himself look like the victim. He started talking about how the internet's blaming me, how people are being unfair, and how all of it was hurting his mental health. Bro, a man just lost his life, and instead of focusing on justice, you're out here worried about protecting your image? That's beyond foul. Man, the fake sympathy in those videos was way too obvious. It didn't come off like real emotion. It looked like straight up acting. Real grief doesn't need a camera or a script, and Boosie's whole vibe screamed performance. He was trying too hard to look innocent, and instead, he ended up looking even more suspicious. Then things got even crazier when fans started digging for receipts. People online found footage of Boosie's nephew leaving the building right before Duke got shot, and that discovery shook everybody. Internet detectives pieced together timelines using security footage, social media posts, and eyewitness statements, and what they uncovered painted a chilling picture of how everything went down that night. But here's the part that made everyone's jaw drop. Duke's Louis Vuitton bag, filled with his jewelry, was found at Boosie's spot. How does that even happen? Boosie tried to explain it away, saying Duke asked him to hold the bag during the dice game, but come on, if that was true, why didn't the bag ever make it back to Duke's family? Why was it just sitting there like it belonged to him? Social media went into full detective mode and people started connecting the dots. They linked this case to other shady situations tied to Jay Prince Jr. and his crew, cases where out-of-town artists ended up robbed or worse after attending those so-called friendly dice games in Houston. Suddenly, it didn't look like a one-time tragedy. It looked like a repeating pattern, and that's when Boosie's real side came out. Once the internet basically pieced the case together and exposed all the evidence, his whole attitude flipped. He went from acting sad and innocent to cold and defensive real quick, like someone who realized the story he built was finally starting to crumble. Instead of keeping up the act of a grieving friend, Boosie flipped out once people started piecing together what really went down. That anger alone spoke volumes. It told everyone exactly what they needed to know. Instead of staying calm or showing pain, he jumped online dropping heated videos, calling people internet detectives and keyboard warriors, clearly pressed that fans were connecting the dots and exposing the truth.
You think niggas wake up and just choose Boosie to steal from? You don't think there's better people to steal from? Like, it's not fucking happening. Boosie is not a victim, dog. Like, that nigga ain't no... Boosie is a fucking villain.
But here's the thing. If you're really innocent, why get mad at people who just want justice for Duke? That reaction didn't make sense. A person with nothing to hide would want folks digging for answers. They'd appreciate that people cared enough to demand justice for their friend. But Boosie, he looked more worried about saving his image than finding out who really did it. That's wild. Then he started trying to discredit every piece of evidence fans had pulled together. He dropped video after video, trying to twist things, explaining away the phone records, the fingerprints, the witness statements, everything, but none of it added up. His excuses sounded rushed and shaky, like someone trying too hard to cover his tracks. When you have to work that hard to explain away the facts, it usually means something isn't right. People saw right through it. The more he talked, the guiltier he looked. And while everyone online was fighting for answers, Boosie was too busy attacking the very people trying to bring truth to light. It became crystal clear where his priorities were. His reputation came first, not justice for Duke. And the most shocking part, even folks close to him started to turn their backs. When your own circle starts losing faith, that's when you know the mask is slipping and the truth's getting too loud to ignore. Here's where things get even more explosive. Boosie's own brother TQ came forward claiming he's got receipts that prove Duke was set up. When your own family starts calling you out for something that serious, you already know it's bad. No way around it. TQ and Boosie have been at odds for years over money, business deals, and betrayal. But this time, TQ wasn't just throwing shade. He was hinting that he had the truth locked in. According to court papers, TQ allegedly took over $360,000 from Boosie's account and even helped one of Boosie's artists sign with another label behind his back. So yeah, their relationship was already messy, but this Duke situation pushed TQ to speak louder than ever. He started dropping cryptic posts on social media saying he knew what really went down and that Boosie wasn't nearly as innocent as he was trying to look. TQ claimed he had evidence that could blow the lid off the whole setup. Something that could expose every hidden move and connection tied to Duke's death. And just when people thought the story couldn't get wilder, another twist hit the internet. Some folks started drawing comparisons between what happened to Duke and what happened to Takeoff from Migos. Both tragedies went down after Dice games in Houston. Both involved J. Prince Jr.'s circle, and both ended with young, successful men losing their lives over pride, money, and jewelry. That's way too close to be random. People online began pointing out how the same pattern kept repeating. Talented artists and entrepreneurs visiting Houston, getting invited to these exclusive Dice games, and then things suddenly going left. When you see that many similarities, it's hard not to question what's really happening behind the scenes. This whole situation isn't just messy, it's starting to look like a dangerous cycle that keeps claiming lives. That's not just coincidence, that's a full-blown pattern of predatory behavior. And what if I told you there might be even more victims out there that nobody knows about yet? It's crazy to think about. How many successful people got invited to Houston for business or networking, only to never make it back home? How many families are still grieving because of these Dice game setups that keep repeating the same deadly cycle? Name, Charleston White has been warning people about this for years. He's been calling out the dangerous environment that J. Prince Jr. and his crew allegedly create in Houston. According to him, that so-called check-in culture isn't about respect. It's a system designed to spot and target successful outsiders who come to the city flashing money, jewelry, and fame. Now think about it. The Takeoff situation went down at a Dice game where money, pride, and ego were on the table. Sound familiar?
Get older, you be like, bro, like, how the fuck you 40 years old still gotta look over your shoulder, you know, from your past. That's a fucked up feeling. When you gotta go especially when you go in your city, you gotta look everywhere over your shoulder. Like, that shit wasn't worth it. The respect you got for anything you did ain't worth you being a older man looking over your motherfucking shoulder.
That's right.
The Duke situation followed the same pattern. He won big against people who don't take losing lightly, and suddenly, he's gone. The parallels are way too clear to ignore. Both tragedies involve the same names: J. Prince Jr., his crew, and a network of Houston street figures tied to these underground gambling scenes. It's like they've built a blueprint: lure successful people in, make them feel welcome, then trap them once money or respect gets challenged. That's not random, that's organized. Now, the ongoing federal investigation into Duke's murder could be the key that cracks this whole thing wide open. If investigators connect the dots between Duke's case, takeoffs, and other unsolved hits around Houston, the entire operation could collapse. Because once you start pulling one thread in a setup this big, the whole network can unravel fast. And that's exactly why this matters for the entire hip-hop world right now. Right now, the federal investigation is still moving full force. But word from sources close to the case says indictments could drop any day now. The evidence stacking up against Boosie and his crew is looking serious. And when federal prosecutors step in, you already know they don't play unless they're confident they can win. That's their style. They build airtight cases before making a move. Boosie keeps trying to hold on to his innocence in public, but behind the scenes, his legal team is reportedly bracing for the worst. Because let's be real, when the feds are coming for you, that's not something you can just rap your way out of. No cap. This isn't a social media rumor. This is an organized investigation that could shake the whole music world to its core. The streets are watching closely too. People are saying this case might pull the curtain back on a full network of organized crime that's been quietly moving through the hip-hop scene for years. If Boosie actually goes down for this, it could push other victims and witnesses to finally step up and expose similar setups happening in other cities. That would be a major shift in the game. And think about it, what if this case ends up changing how the entire industry handles security and business deals? The ripple effect could be huge. Artists might start getting way more cautious about who they link up with and where they do business. Nobody wants to be the next headline. The Duke case has already made a lot of artists question that whole check-in culture that exists in certain cities. People are starting to realize that checking in might not be about respect or protection. It could actually be a setup tool used to identify and track successful visitors. Now, record labels and management teams are reviewing their travel policies and tightening security for their talent. Everyone's realizing that in this industry, one wrong connection could cost you everything. The days of blindly trusting so-called street legends might finally be over. This case could spark a massive shift, not just in Houston, but across the whole country. If the feds manage to prove that there's a coordinated network of criminals targeting successful people in the hip-hop industry, we could be looking at a nationwide crackdown unlike anything the culture's ever seen. That's huge. And the ripple effect in Houston's hip-hop scene could be next level. If J. Prince Jr. and his crew actually get taken down, that could flip the entire power structure in the city. It might open the door for artists, producers, and entrepreneurs to move freely without having to pay respect to certain street figures just to stay safe. That's a major shift in how the city and the industry operates. So that's the full breakdown of how Boosie allegedly set up Duke the Jeweler and got him caught in a deadly trap. The whole situation is absolutely wild, and the evidence stacking up makes it hard to ignore. From the rigged dice game to the suspicious social media behavior to the ongoing federal investigation, every single piece points to a setup that was planned from the inside out. But let's be real, this story goes way beyond one man's death. It's about a system of organized crime that's been quietly feeding off successful people in the hip-hop world for years. Duke the Jeweler was just one victim in a much larger pattern of greed, betrayal, and violence that's been hiding in plain sight. And the craziest part, even Boosie's own family started turning on him. When your own blood refuses to stand by your side, that says everything. Once your family can't defend your actions, you've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed, and there's no coming back from that. The federal investigation is still rolling strong, but every sign points to major indictments coming real soon. The evidence is stacking too high, the witnesses are finally talking, and the pattern of shady behavior is way too obvious for prosecutors to overlook. It's only a matter of time before those names start dropping, but let Duke the Jeweler's story be a warning. Not everyone smiling in your face is a friend. Sometimes the people hyping you up, the same ones inviting you to the party, might be plotting against you the moment you step outside. Duke learned that the hardest way possible, and his tragedy should remind everyone to move smart, stay alert, and know who's really around you. Because here's the truth, the internet never sleeps and no lie stays hidden forever. Boosie might have thought he could walk away clean, posting fake sympathy and pretending to care, but the receipts are out there. And justice for Duke the Jeweler is coming. When it hits, it's gonna shake the entire network of people who thought they were untouchable. If you learned something new about this whole situation, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, share this video, and drop a comment below, because we've got way more real talk coming your way. The streets are buzzing, and we're gonna keep uncovering the truth that the mainstream media won't touch. You deserve to know what's really going down behind the flashy chains and luxury lifestyles.